Welcome. I'm Matthew Phelps, co-author of the Turning to God's Word Bible study, The United Kingdom of Israel, Foreshadowing the Reign of Christ the King. Today we'll be talking about Lesson 28 of our study, which covers the first book of Kings, chapter 11, verse 9, through chapter 12, verse 24. Now we finally see what has been predictable for quite a while here. God is not pleased with Solomon somehow. I can't imagine why. And as a result of that, comes to him and says, remember all those times I told you everything would go fine for you if you followed my commands? Well, you didn't. And now for the other part of that, it's not going to go fine for you. I'm going to take the kingdom away from you. But, and not because of anything you did, but I really like people who do keep my commands. Because your father David did, I will let you keep reigning for the rest of your life. But after that, no more kingdom for your household. But because of what your father David did and how much he followed my commands, I won't totally take it from your house, just almost all of it. And that's not because of anything you did, but again, because your father David was excellent, and I liked him a lot. So we're setting a couple of precedents here. One, the good actions of a king and someone who pleases God can have consequences extending beyond his own lifetime, even helping to cover up and make the road easier for people even who do badly by God. And two, God knows if you're screwing up and he's not going to let you get away with it, and there will be consequences, especially if you are a king. In all the time we've been talking about Solomon's reign up until now, it's been all rainbows and unicorns. Everything has been, he was so rich and so great, and we never heard about any of the neighbors except when it was he dominated all of them and they were all his slaves, and everything was wonderful and perfect and good. And now that suddenly we've decided that's not true, we're going to mention just a few other things that have been going on as well that make it seem like things were maybe not entirely as under control as we might have talked about. There are a few people that don't exactly love Solomon and his kingdom. On this section, Hadad the Edomite, who is still pissed off for some reason because Joab killed almost all of the Edomites. And he's not exactly fond of that. And holds it against Judah and Israel because, of course, Joab was a representative thereof. And so holds it against Solomon, even though Solomon killed Joab. So he's got kind of a grudge. He's been living, it's very popular in the ancient world apparently, if you're rich or connected, to flee to Egypt for a while. And it seems like Pharaoh is more than willing to take potential or political refugees who potentially have use later on under his wing and help and support them. And that's what happens here. Not the first time, not the last time, but it happens here. But when Hadad learns that the situation has changed and there's a new person in charge, no more David to deal with, everybody, as soon as David's out of the way, thinks, okay, I can start being a pest now. Remember, David built his kingship on successfully executing military campaigns against all of his neighbors. Solomon built his power by trade and didn't seem to worry too much about the military situation. People aren't as scared of Solomon as they were of David. Even if he has a big kingdom and a lot of money, they'd say, oh, David's gone, we can go cause some trouble. And that's exactly what happens here. Without David around, Hadad says, Pharaoh, it's been great. Thanks for the marriage into your family and for supporting me and giving me land and all of that all this time. It's been truly wonderful, but I want to go home and cause some trouble. And that's what happens. Hadad is here not the only one who is ready to come back and cause some trouble. We also see Rezon do the same thing. So basically here we're going through a list of, oh, by the way, there are some people who are more than happy to cause some trouble for Solomon when opportunity presents itself. So the two people we've seen causing trouble so far have been foreigners, which is kind of expected. Now we cut to a thing that, in the absence of really strong leadership, is also sometimes expected, but a little more surprising, which is there's also some internal strife in the kingdom in the form of a guy named Jeroboam, who is a good guy, great worker. It's a nice big promotion. He's over all the forced laborers of the tribe of Joseph, which raises an interesting point. We saw in the last lesson the implication that everybody who was an Israelite, not the implication, it was stated straight out, everyone who was an Israelite had a cushy management job, and slaves were only from foreign peoples. But you can't be a guy who's in charge of the forced labor of the people of Joseph if you're not forcing the people from the tribe of Joseph into labor. So there seems to be a little bit of a contradiction here, and this one more likely. Maybe it changed over time as Solomon needed more and more labor. He did reign for 40 years, and we were talking about that right around the midpoint. So it's possible he ran out of slaves, or it's possible the other part was just a little pro-Solomon propaganda and everything's great in Israel. Here again, we are seeing, once we know that Solomon has screwed up, the rosy glasses have come off here in terms of his reign, and we're talking about the bad stuff and not just the good stuff. Whereas before, we pretty much just talked about the good stuff. But at any rate, Jeroboam, good guy, God-fearing, good worker, does some good stuff, not pissed off about anything, not really upset, just going about his business when Ahijah the prophet interferes and comes to him and says, "Hey buddy, how would you look at this new cloak I have. I'm going to tear it into 12 pieces. These represent the 12 tribes of Israel. How would you like 10 of them? Or better yet, you're just going to get them whether you want to or not. Welcome." And so 10 tribes are going to go to Jeroboam, who is an Ephraimite, not from the tribe of Judah. So we have another tribe. The kingship so far has rested with Saul, a Benjaminite, with David and Solomon, Judahites, and now we're going to see also having kingly authority, an Ephraimite, and we have seen also God's not going to take the whole kingdom away from Judah, so that necessarily means we're going to have two different kings and two different kingdoms. And as the prophet continues to talk to Jeroboam, he emphasizes, but because David the king was so great, I'm not going to take everything away from his line. Hint, hint, Jeroboam, who's about to be king, get the message. A good king means a long line, even if there are some transgressions. Badness on the king means things get taken away from him and his line. You should pay attention, especially right now, to that part. You yourself still need to, if you want a sure house and a long line, to follow God and to follow the commandments and the ordinances, the usual drill you need to do. I'm not just being punitive here to David's line. I'm willing to establish something with you as well. If you can be like David was and we can work something out, then you can have a permanent, perpetual thing too, and that can be nice, and we'll deal with that. But you have to get it right as well. So far, the track record of people suddenly being called by God and having all of this power when they didn't before, we're 1 for 3. We got David, Saul, we're 1 for 2. I'm hinting ahead a little bit. Saul did well, or badly. David did well. Solomon grew up to it, so he had a little bit more of a chance. He wasn't just pulled out of the field, but he also was corrupted by the power involved in the kingship. So we have seen a 67% corruption rate when faced with the power of the kingship, which is again why God is emphasizing to everyone he talks to, be like David and good things will happen for a long time. but please just try to be like David a little bit. The other thing he mentions here is he's turning away from David for a while, but not forever. So he says, Jeroboam, you can do what you want. I'm punishing the house of David, but not forever. Which, again, should give you pause if you're the one getting all the rest of the stuff to think, this might not be forever. I better follow the rules. But there is a bad precedent for that. I guess we'll have to see what happens. Somehow, Solomon catches wind of the prophecy that was given to Jeroboam. A really good guess for how that is Jeroboam probably went around telling people. You might be pretty excited if you get that message, and you might not keep it to yourself. And if you tell the wrong person, the king's going to find out. And Solomon acts much more like Saul than like David once he gets the news. But of course, we know he's already not done so well. Oh, there's a threat to my power. I'd better kill him. Even though the prophecy has said, Solomon's been told over and over, you'll stay king for the rest of your life, don't worry about it. And he already knows from God that after that, that won't be true. Yet he still finds the guy that God has said, I'm going to give you part of the kingdom, the big part of the kingdom, because Solomon screwed up, and wants to kill him. This is not somebody who wants to see the will of God done. This is somebody who is, again, trying to serve himself and his line. So Jeroboam flees to Egypt. It seems to be the thing to do again. While Solomon is alive, because he fears for his life, and rightly so. And we see Solomon reigns for 40 years. So we've got 40 years of Saul, 40 years of David, 40 years of Solomon, for a total of 120 years when the kingdom was united. And then we know already that following Solomon's death, the kingdom will not stay united. But we don't not yet know how that comes about. So, cut to Solomon's son, Rehoboam, who is taking power, and everybody comes together to say, congrats, king, good job. Jeroboam knows Solomon's dead. He comes back. He's probably doing a little bit of inciting of the people and says, hey, this conscripted labor that Solomon had us all do for all those years, we really didn't care for. Could you make that easier? They didn't even say, can you take it away entirely? They said, can you lighten the load? Is their question. And he says, I don't know about that. Give me 3 days to think about it. And so Rehoboam is considering how to respond to what seems like a pretty reasonable request. Rehoboam has bought himself 3 days to think about how to respond to the request of the people. He starts by going to his father's counselors. Good move. His father managed to reign until his death, and everybody did what he said, and things worked out pretty well for him during his lifetime. And they say, if you show the people a little bit of leniency right now, then they're going to love and serve you, and you'll be in a great spot. And then, being the entitled young rich kid that he is, goes to his friends who also grew up entitled young rich kids, who all seem to have pretty warped perspectives on what the world is and how it works. And their advice is, you can't go easy on these people or you'll be doing it forever. You've got to come down hard and set some ground rules here. They've got to know you mean business. You should instead tell the people, you think that was bad, wait till I get going, it's going to be way worse. Which, just on its face, seems like absolutely terrible advice. But so we see Rehoboam left with two competing suggestions as to what he might do, and we'll see which one he chooses. So, after thinking it over to the best of his not overwhelmingly impressive ability, Rehoboam comes to a decision that, if nothing else, highlights for us that the God-given wisdom of Solomon is not hereditary. When he comes up with the idea that, yes, what I want to do is tell the people that now that I'm king, it's going to be much worse for them. the assumption he seems to be making is that everyone has to follow him because he's king and that they have no other options. Maybe he didn't catch wind of what everybody seems to know, the prophecy that somebody else is going to take most of the kingdom when he's thinking about what he's going to do here. Really, the guy comes across as just a gigantic idiot in this part. But we know that's supposed to happen. God has made it happen that way because of what he wants to be done. It wouldn't be the first time that God has hardened somebody's heart against doing what seems like a pretty reasonable thing in the face of different choices because he wants something to come out a certain way. So Rehoboam makes a poor decision, and the people say, well, we don't have, if you're going to treat us this way, we don't have any share in this kingship, so we're out. Have fun. We're not going to serve you. Pass. So, noticing that he has made a gigantic PR bungle, Rehoboam attempts to fix it by sending a representative to the people, who remember, whose complaint was, could you ease up on the forced labor a little bit? So, to head the delegation, he sends the guy who's in charge of all of the forced labor to say, hey guys, no, really, you want to come back. The message being, you want to come back and work for me, the guy who oversees forced labor, and do that again. And their response is to stone him to death, which is a version of no thank you. And then they all, the Israelites all together seem to realize, oh, Jeroboam's here. We like him, he's competent, and we all seem to remember that there was this prophecy where he was going to be king, and we need one. What a coincidence. Let's just get that done. Jeroboam, do you want to be king of Israel? And I mean, sure, why not? He's around, so we'll do that. What we didn't mention earlier is worth bringing up now. We'll see a little bit of how it resolves. There is one tribe left to Rehoboam, and only 10 tribes have gone to Jeroboam, and there are 12 tribes in Israel, and we keep talking like the whole thing is settled, which is a little bit of a mathematical problem in that we're missing a tribe. And right now where we're at in the text, there are a few different ways you can look at it. Maybe they're not counting the Levites, not exactly sure what's going on. It will become very clear here in our next section. So, Rehoboam, in his infinite wisdom, is in a little bit of a fix, so he runs home, and he decides that the best solution to his incredible streak of bad decision-making is to round up all the troops he can and go try to kill all the people in the kingdom that he lost by being dumb. And he seems to think that that will solve all of his problems. Mind you, he is killing, at that point, his kinsmen, which is not totally recommended. God really doesn't love that, nor would his kinsmen, or even the people following him still. Generally, just an egregiously bad plan, but that's what he starts marshaling everybody to do. We do have a solution here to our mathematical problem. We know that Jeroboam has 10 tribes on his side, and we've seen Rehoboam with 1 so far, but we see here, probably largely as a result of an historical closeness, that the Benjaminites throw in their lot with Rehoboam and the Judahites. And from now on, what is called Judah will implicitly include Benjamin, even though it keeps the name Judah. And so there's our 10 and 2 split, as it turns out. So Judah and Benjamin are gathering their troops to try to go rectify a mistake that was made when a prophet shows up and says, hey, no, knock it off. We don't want you to do that. In fact, God doesn't want you to do that. And that is not how you solve this problem. This was going to happen. God wanted this to happen. It was his will. Please don't try to do this and kill your kinsmen, with the implication being it's going to go really badly for you anyway if you try it, but just don't. And for whatever reason, Rehoboam makes the first intelligent decision of his kingship and decides to listen to the prophet. And so the lines are set. We have two different kingdoms. In this lesson, we've also seen something newly coming up, or more abundantly coming up, in the kingdom as it's divided. We have two different prophets talking to two different kings here in one lesson. And that is a thing that will become more plentiful, more abundant, as we have the divided kingdom and more kings with more screwing up and more need to be told what they need to do to get on track. So as we move forward in the narrative from here, this particular Bible study ends obviously with the end of the United Kingdom here, but we see foreshadowing of things to come. We see now we will have two kingdoms with two kings and various degrees of almost universally screwing up, and along with that we will have a large uptick in the role of the prophets and the number of the prophets. To pick up from where this narrative is, if you're interested in continuing along, we have a study on the prophets and the divided kingdom of Israel that is coming out for publication in fall of 2018. That will pick up pretty well where this left off. There will be a little bit of overlap with a somewhat different emphasis as we shift our primary focus away from the kingship and onto the prophets. This has been an overview of Lesson 28 of the Turning to God's Word Bible Study, The United Kingdom of Israel, Foreshadowing the Reign of Christ the King. For more information, consult our written study and visit us online at turningtogodsword.com.